morning, everyone. This is Zach Edwards with another episode of the Adventure Box podcast. We are so excited to talk to you about this. We're going to Egypt. This is like the most fascinating place you could ever go. This is somewhere I really want to go when the Middle East calms down. But until then, I'm so excited to talk to you about this because the history, it's so full of mystery. History, mystery. Hey, check that out. Okay. What I wanted to talk to you about first is the Historical Conquest, our sponsor. They're the ones that produce the Historical Conquest, the game, Totally Medieval, the math game, and so much more. And as you can see, you get a whole bunch of different decks that you can choose from to customize your deck and make it the best deck ever. And this is a game that looks like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering and such, but it plays like the game of Risk, where you're trying to take over the world, and yet all the cards are historically based. So you're actually learning history while having fun. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into Egypt. I'm so excited. I just really, really enjoy this area. So let's go with a map first. Now, if you're on the podcast, you're not going to see this, but that's okay. It's just a world map. So it's nothing, you're not missing much. We will actually have a few pictures. So if you want to go into our YouTube channel, this is the time to do it, or at least for this episode. Just because there's a lot of pictures we're going to show you of the Nile, of the different kingdoms and such. You can't really do that over podcast. Though, if you're on the podcast, great, listen, have fun. We're going to describe everything to you so you can actually hear it and picture it in your mind. So as of right now, picture a map that's showing the United States and Africa. So if you go directly east until you hit Europe and then go south, that's where Africa is. And in this picture, you can actually see how like almost half of Africa is desert. Now that's pretty interesting because it didn't used to be that way. Now we already went over that last month when we were talking about ancient Africa. But now we're actually taking out a section of ancient Africa, which is Egypt, the Sudan, which actually used to be called Nubia, the Ethiopia area, and such. So we're going to go over a lot of this today, but I wanted to give you a little heads up of what we're doing. Now, we're actually going to start back way in the back. Way back into the past. Okay, we're going to start off with the actual Neolithic time. So remember, Neolithic time was basically when settlements started to gather and people would settle down in one area, no longer being nomads. Now, again, there was a lot of nomads during this time, but the Neolithic is when people really started to settle down into their own areas. So, interesting enough, there are a lot of different cultures in this area. So, in Egypt, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit into Egypt. So, we got Saudi Arabia, which is across the Red Sea from Egypt, which is just above Sudan, and so forth. Now, talking about ancient times, we would have the Mideast. The Mideast is basically all it was called. There was no country or civilization or such that just propagated that area completely. There was a lot of different places, such as, well, we won't go into it, but you had Persia that was around the area, and then you had, Persia was over in Iran, which is on the other side of Saudi Arabia. You had Mesopotamia, Mesopotamia was actually a breakdown of different civilizations, and which included the Syrians, the Babylonians, and actually next 2 months from now, we'll actually go over that civilization. Not right now, because Egypt, it's all by itself, because it's so encompassing. There's so much there. Okay, so we're going to say about 6,000 BC was early Neolithic settlements of Egypt. Now, if you zoom down, I've got another picture of this. They both are really good pictures when it comes to the Nile. The Nile is basically, if you look at a map where Egypt is, about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the way east into Egypt, you're going to see on the eastern side, you're going to see this big snake-like river going through. And that snake-like river is snake-like in the sense that it's very green at the top near the Mediterranean. Of course, Mediterranean, even if it's salt water, filters through the ground and everything becomes freshwater without that much filtering. And so all that area is very lush and green, basically where the city of Alexandria will become. But we won't talk about that yet because it's not part of this history yet. Okay, so as you go down, you're going to see a large stretch of this area being very green around the Nile. Again, because the Nile is bringing in so much water. Now, again, when it starts out, a lot of it has a, what do they call it? It's a mixture of salt water and fresh water. And then it comes into completely fresh water. So it gives all this moisture to this area, which is prime for what? Settlers. Settlers love to be able to find a place that is green, lush, and has a lot of water. So they settle in this area because they need a farm. And this is where they say, okay, I'm not going to lose this place to someone else, and I don't have to go after the herds in other areas because this is like surrounded by desert, so the animals don't want to go out anywhere else. They want to stay near the water. And so if the animals are going to stay there, so are the people. So the people are staying in around the Nile. And you've got a lot of different groups that are growing here. Okay, I'm going to bring in my first picture. Yes, let's bring in this picture. This is Africa. If you look, you're going to see this blue river going all the way down to this lake. Now, this is the Nile River. It goes all the way down. Now it's actually been built out to go to the Red Sea, which we can actually see in here. I think it's up here. So this is where the port is, where you now have transit between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. So it's not actually the Nile that has it. It's actually part of the Red Sea. And this channel is going all the way down until it enters into the Bitter Lake, which bitter being the salt, and then trickles into further down into the Red Sea. Now, if you look at the map, between the Nile and the Red Sea was still desert. It was still dry area. So most of the people settled as much as possible around the Nile. Now, let's bring you some of these pictures. Okay. So, and then also if you look, Egypt encompasses that much of the Nile, but a lot of the Nile, most of the Nile, is actually going through the Sudan. So the Sudan has a large amount of that water coming in from the Mediterranean and coming from that lake. So now let's go over to the next picture. If you look at it from the International Space Station, which circles the globe up in space, this is what you're going to see. So you're going to see a very wide open river coming down, and then you get to see the Red Sea, and also this is where the Mediterranean attaches to the Red Sea through that port that we just showed. So you have all this semi-lush land between the Nile and the Red Sea, though a lot of it's still desert. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one, which is also fascinating. This is another one that shows, so you have a lot of lush area, very green. This is where the settlers all settled. All those they're not prehistoric. They are early man, let's just say. So these are all the people that gathered in this area because there was such lush environment that they could grow things and harvest things. And though some might be swamps, they learned to work with them to create agriculture. And then they took the herds that were in the area and they domesticated the animals. This was all during the Neolithic era. And this was happening all around the world. So everywhere around the world that had humans, the Neolithic era is when they were actually settling this area. Okay, so there's actually two groups. There is Lower Egypt, which is basically the lush area that encompasses basically where the Mediterranean goes into the Nile, or the Nile goes into the Mediterranean, and goes down like halfway through Egypt. I got a better picture than this. Let's go to the next one. This just shows how lush and green it is. Now, this is not actually the Nile itself, because as you can see, there are waterfalls over here. There are actually rapids and such in the Nile, but it's not like waterfalls. They're not huge when it comes to that. Okay, I guess actually there are some. Not huge waterfalls though. Okay, but let's keep going. I want to go something. So this is how it is right now. So you can see a large amount of water coming through, and large ships can get in there as well. And people would wash in there and such, and it was right on the side of a lot of ruins as well. So a lot of the Egyptian ruins were on the side of the Nile. Why? Because they settled there. Of course, that's how easy it is. Okay, here we go. So Lower Egypt was actually up in the northern area. It's funny. When I first thought of it, when I first heard Lower Egypt, I was thinking geographically. So southern would be Lower Egypt. But if you think about it, they're on the actual, well, let's go to the map. Let's see if we can find the equator. Okay, so it's not showing me here with the equator. Let me see if I can do this. Here's the equator. So the equator's well south of Egypt. So it's not because of the northern and southern Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, which is what I thought. It was all geographical. No, for them, it was based on the lushness of the area. So Lower Egypt is where the water would flow from up here down into the Mediterranean. So this allowed for a lot of fresh water to come to all of these different groups in here. So the Upper Kingdom is a higher elevation, and it goes slowly down into Lower Egypt. Okay, so going forward, you have these rivers all feeding this area, and you have people settling in this area. So around 4000 to about 3500 BC, you had other cultures coming in. So you had the first culture was basically called the Myrid culture. This is the Lower Egypt. This is again the top of the northern part where it was most lush, and settled around there up down to Cairo area, which, as you can see in this map, it's a tenth of the way down from the Mediterranean. So it's very close to the Mediterranean. And this is establishing small villages all over the place in this area. Now, again, when people find this area, it's so lush and green, they do not want to give it up. So they stop moving around. But then it comes into the Barbarian culture, one of the earliest known agricultural societies, still Neolithic era. But this is the Upper Egypt area. So you have two now completely different cultures. So they're down up here in the Upper Kingdom of Egypt, which is the southern part of Egypt. And these are the ones that are doing fine crafts, pottery. Again, like I said, agriculture, and also domesticating animals, and then all those types of things. But this is also where they start talking about their beliefs in the afterlife. And we're going to come back to that at the end of this podcast. Oh, no, sorry. Thursday's podcast, we're going to be talking about the afterlife, their faith, their religion, their gods, and such. That's where it's really fascinating. And there's something that not many historians talk about, and not many, I don't think you'll see any of the curriculums out there that will talk about it. But it's very fascinating, and it is very true. So we'll go through it and why we want to tell you about that. Okay, so going forward, so about 4000 BC to 3500, you've got two different cultures that settled in this area, both doing the same thing. So basically two cultures that broke off from each other. So this is actually the Barbarian, and then the predecessor, I guess, would be the best one. The one that followed after it was the Tanzian culture. Okay, going a little bit further, this one's going to be, and we're going to talk about Lower Egypt. So at the same time that these two cultures were taking over Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, not up near the Mediterranean, were three different cultures. And they all fed off each other, basically. Well, there's actually two, and they fed into one. It was called the Naquada Naquata number 1. You probably won't remember any of these names, which is okay. You don't have to. These are early cultures. You never be tested on it. You never have any issues with it. But I'm letting you know that these are how it's set up. So this phase saw the development of more complex societies in Lower Egypt. In Upper Egypt. This is also one that was in Upper Egypt. Again, advancements in pottery and such. This next one, and funny enough, I remember these being all Upper Egypt. So let's go into this a little bit. Oh, this is why. Okay. Sorry, I got to remember my notes. Okay, the next part is, this one's called the Naquata 2. Naquata 2 is this culture. This is another culture. It's also called the Jersean culture. It's a more advanced Upper Egyptian society. Early kinships, symbols appear. So the drawings, the hieroglyphics and such, these all start appearing. On the pottery, they start appearing. Now, this is actually getting closer to Nubia or the Sudan. And why that's significant is because there was relationships all the way down the Nile, whether it's up in Egypt or it was down in the Nile. They all traded, they all worked together in this way. Nearing this point, they started to work together. And then there was the Lower Egypt, like I was talking about, and this is the Buto Muadi culture. So this culture thrived in Lower Egypt near the Delta. So basically near where all the lush green environment was. They were also known for pottery as well, and the construction of early urban centers, basically where they had cities come together and people come together. So this is really interesting. And this is where trade starts. So it starts up in the Lower Egypt and starts filtering down where people either sailed a boat or floated a boat down into Upper Egypt and down further into Nubia, trading. So let's fast forward a little bit more. Let's go to 3300. This is the Naquata 3. Okay, so this is the third group, also known as the Proto-Dynastic Period. This is right before the dynasties start. And this is really important to know because around 3000 BC is when they started having dynasties. So you're going to be learning a lot about dynasties in this curriculum. This is basically the rulers of Egypt. And the reason why this is essential to know is because it breaks up basically who ran the country, and all the different parts that are broken off of it show you, because not every family ran it for a very long period of time. It was usually taken over by somebody else, and majorly later on. Greeks, Assyrians, Persians, I already said Greeks, the Arabs. So all these different groups. Oh, Romans. That's the one I missed. That was the one I was thinking of. Okay, so now how did Egypt become one civilization? There was Lower Egypt and there was Upper Egypt. How in the world did they become one? His name was King Narmer. King Narmer was about 31 BC. 3100 BC. He was the one credited with the unification of Egypt. He basically brought the two kingdoms together, actually, funny enough, by force. So Narmer, he was also known as Menes, so Pharaoh Menes, is depicted as the, he actually had, there's pottery that was based off him, but he was the ruler over Upper Egypt and conquered Lower Egypt. So he came in and took down, and he's the one that started the actual first dynasty. So, actually, one thing that I thought was very interesting, Upper Egypt. So Upper Egypt, there was a time between 3200 BC and 3100 BC, there was someone called the Scorpion King. Yeah, so there's a movie on it, totally fiction, has nothing to do with history. It was interesting because The Rock was in it, but anyways, total fiction. But what was interesting is that this is the time when they actually started moving towards unification with the Scorpion King. So this is the first stage of him actually going in and suggesting that they wanted to attempt to bring Upper and Lower. But it wasn't until Narmer where they were able to actually do that. Okay, so during this unification time, they were able to bring Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt into one dynasty, into one rule. And this solved a lot of issues, even though the people in Lower Egypt did not want to be part of this. It actually solved a lot of issues. Okay, so let's go into Narmer. And the reason why we're going to go into his life is because it's essential to understand who we're talking about. So the country, the civilization is very split apart. It's basically just villages everywhere. Upper Egypt has one ruler in it. Now, until the time of basically the Scorpion King. Now, at this point, you have Narmer, who learns of their efforts to unify. He is considered the first pharaoh of Egypt because he's able to bring them together and actually centralizes the Egyptian state. Now, one thing that you need to know during this time, Narmer's reign over this time was actually around 3100. They don't know exactly when it started, to about 3050 BC. So he had about a 50-year reign or such. During this time, he sent his troops into Lower Egypt and conquered it, took it over, and started changing the infrastructure that was there, building up great monuments. This is what we call the early dynasty period. So this is again the unification. But this brings up another essential part, which is the Old Kingdom. The Old Kingdom is essential to know about because this is where you got a lot of the pharaohs that you might have heard of. Not the 18th dynasty. There's two different periods that are very well known. But the reason why you've heard of this one is because this is where the Pyramid of Giza was developed. The Sphinx was also developed because Giza, and then you have the Sphinx outside of it. Now, let me go through some of these. Okay, so the first one after, again, a little bit after, let's see, 1350 is when Narmer died. And, of course, somebody else came in his place. But we're jumping way forward, into the Older Kingdom. In the Older Kingdom, you actually have, you know what? Let's go into a little bit more of the Older Kingdom. Okay, I don't have it here. Read about it in your curriculum. There's a lot of information there. But I really wanted to get to this part, which is the third dynasty, which is Pharaoh Djoser. Now, Djoser is best known for the step pyramids of the Old Kingdom. So everyone talks about the pyramids of Giza, not much about these pyramids. The step pyramids, if you can see, this actually looks like a step pyramid that's like falling apart because it's a section of it's like taken out. But the step pyramids are the first pyramids that were actually built. They did not have these smooth structures that you see today. And actually, you see the step pyramids too. But like every time you hear something about Egypt, you always see the smooth ones because they're a lot more attractive in marketing for Egypt. But the step pyramids are the oldest pyramids that you have. So he actually built I think he built a few of them. I don't remember exactly what it was. But they were actually designed by his vizier, who is Imhotep. No, not the Imhotep from The Mummy. Yes, another movie. But, and you know what? Those are all fiction, but they're quite interesting to see and then have fun with while actually learning about Egypt. Because I love the idea of mummies and mummification, things like that. The curses, we can go over some of that as well, more in the modern day of it. But, so, Djoser was the ruler who created the step pyramids, but they were actually an idea of the vizier, who is Imhotep. And then again, his rule was about 2600 to about 2686 to 2649 BC. And so at this point, you have these great structures being built. And not just the step pyramids, but a lot of other structures as well. He did a lot of construction all throughout. Now, go a little bit further down in the fourth dynasty. So that was his family. The fourth dynasty is another family. It's another group that's basically all interconnected in a dynasty. You have Pharaoh Neferu, that's what it was. Yes. So he's responsible for building 3 step pyramids, including the bent pyramid, which I don't have a picture of, and also the red pyramid. So these are perfect like pyramid structures. This is where they start getting to be smooth and such. Not the step pyramids anymore. I'm going to show you a few more pictures of the step pyramids just because I think they're so cool. And these were the early burial grounds for some of the Egyptians, the Egyptian rulers. But now we get into the pyramids. Now, if you can see the picture, you're going to see 3 of the normal pyramids that we see, and then you have 3 smaller step pyramids. And you might be able to see the scale of these. That's a person, and that's one step on the step pyramid. So a step pyramid is probably 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 to 100 feet up. So that's pretty tall. But that's a pyramid that we're seeing all over the place in the marketing and anytime we talk about Egypt. That's 3 to 4 times the height, and that's not even some of the highest ones that are there. So this just shows some of the pyramids that they have in Egypt. So you have, again, Neferu. Then you have Khufu. It has a silent K, but so did Neferu, unless you want to call him Sneferu, but Neferu. Now, Khufu, you actually should know about because he's actually the one that constructed, actually under his management. He didn't actually design it. The Pyramid of Giza. So the Pyramid of Giza is actually the most well-known pyramid in Egypt. And I don't have a picture of it. Darn, I should have done that. Now, what's interesting about this is that the Pyramid of Egypt, the Pyramid at Giza is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Still stands today. And if you look, this one is actually showing quite the similarity to this one, to the Giza. Giza is somewhat falling apart. You can see that there was actually a smoother outside edge on it, and then some of it deteriorates, and they had smaller steps of stones. So I can't wait to actually visit and see exactly how it's put together. But these were the early pyramids in the Old Kingdom. And actually, to know, there's most of the pyramids that you see were actually part of the Old Kingdom. So that's all I'm sharing with this. Okay, so I shared about the Nile. I shared about early dynastic, which is basically Narmer and his part. And then the Old Kingdom. This is the first 3 units in your curriculum. So you're going to want to read these ones. Now, you don't have to read all of the units. Pick the ones you want to read because there's a lot more in them than you could probably read in 1 week. And this is supposed to be 1 week for the first 5 units. Each of them are about 20 pages. So if you want to read, please do. There's a lot of information you wouldn't get anywhere else. Okay, so actually, you know what? Let me go a little bit more into the Old Kingdom. There's still more. I just don't want to go too much and then take away from your reading of this because it's, again, so fascinating. Okay, so you have the first Great Pyramid of Giza. That was by Khufu. And then you have, I think it's a silent D, Shadafri, okay, is known as continuing his father's Khufu's legacy and was the first to associate the title of son of Ra with the pharaoh. Okay, so this is where the religion starts to really come in. You have a god, Ra, and then you have the people underneath them. You have the pharaohs who basically say they are the ability to be the son of Ra, son of the god. And we're going to go into this next week Thursday, about the religion. Okay, so the next one, after he dies, the next one takes over, who is Hafre. Hafre? Yes. So Pharaoh Hafre, or Khafre, is thought to have built the second pyramid of Giza and is associated with the Great Sphinx. So this is the person that actually built that between 2558 to 2532 BC. So his lifespan was only about 26 years. His reign was only about 26 years. So these guys are having very short periods. I mean, his predecessor, the son of Khufu, was actually 1566 to 1558, only 8 years. And then the one after that, this is the one you want to know, because this one ruled from 2532 until 2503. So this gives a little bit more time. The last one was, 24 years. 24 years? 26 years. This next one, is 29 years. So they're getting a little bit longer. People are living a little longer. And the predecessors are dying faster, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. But his name was Menkaure. Yes, let's just call him Pharaoh Menkaure. Really should get these settled. But Menkaure, Menkaure. He created the third and the smallest pyramid of Giza. So also good to know. But at this point is when their bloodline basically runs out. And the pharaohs love to keep the rule within their bloodline. So they did certain things that were not exactly up to our standards. No, they're not up to our standards whatsoever, including intermarriage. So family members marrying, brother and sister marrying, nieces and nephews marrying. That's a little bit less awkward, but yes. So you have a lot of other ones that are coming up, including who built the Sun Temple. That was the next one. In the 5th dynasty, you have Pharaoh Userkaf, and dedicated dedicated that temple to the sun god Ra, and started traditions such as new constructions under this dynasty, different areas. You have another Pharaoh Sahur, is known for advancing Egyptian maritime trade. So more trade going around the Nile, down into Nubia, up above, and over into the Mediterranean as well, and so forth. It's going to keep going through a lot of different people. These ones you don't really hear as much about, though they're very interesting and necessary to know, because you want to know about the pyramids of Giza and such like that. But you have in the 6th dynasty another family, Pharaoh Teti. Now Teti's reign marked the beginning of an internal strife. So, but he did build a pyramid. It was the one in Saqqara. And then you have Pepi, Pharaoh Pepi the first, reigned during this time and increased bureaucracy and expanding trade between Nubia and even Asia now. So you're going more into the Mediterranean and to the Middle East in this trade. You've got a whole bunch of other ones. The next one that you want to hear about is Pharaoh Man, I'm going to grab a new tool. The tool is actually called Google. I'm going to teach you something about Google and what Google has the abilities to do. This gives me the ability to say, how do you say Pharaoh? I should have done this from the beginning. Pharaoh. Come on, catch up. Okay, let's pick one. Userkaf. How do you say Pharaoh Userkaf? And it normally gives you oh, here you go. No, it's going to give us the whole thing. Oh, how do you saw? I don't know how you saw them. Saw 1.5. Okay, usually you can do it. Let me do this. Put quotation marks around them. And let's see if it'll, oh, actually it did have a link to how do you pronounce. Pronounce. That's what we should be looking up. So I give you this. I'm going to give you this tool because I'm so generous, right? I'm giving you Google to be able to learn how to say and pronounce these names. Okay, how to pronounce Userkopf. Okay, so let's hear it.
Userkopf. Userkopf.
Okay, so it's about right. Let's go to the harder ones, the ones that I had issues with. Moncure. Let's see if they can do this one. And look at that, they can't. So let's go back to Google. It was more reliable. So we had Userkopf. Let me see if you can actually hear that. I want to make sure that in this recording you can actually hear Userkopf. Let's go back one more time. There we go. Let's see if it says its name.
Why did God create hell and...
Not what we were looking for. Okay. Look through it. You're going to... Oh, here we go. Well, it's Pharaoh. I guess they're not going to give us all the smaller, lesser-known names. It was worth a try. It's a great tool. Some of them you'll be able to use and get that information. Now, again, where did these names come from? A lot of these names are actually what we've given them. Some of them are the ones that were written down. Because in Egypt, you didn't have the writing way early on. And even if you did, you still don't know exactly how to translate hieroglyphics, certain hieroglyphics, because they changed over the years. I mean, remember, we're talking about 4,000 years, even actually 5,000 years. So we don't know exactly how they're all pronounced and such. But try Google and find out how to say these names. But just know during the 6th century is when they actually started to fall apart. This creates the first intermediate period, which is basically between dynasties. And there are sometimes dynasties within an intermediate time, but this is also just to give you a better understanding that there was a break of the dynasties, and usually it's because there was some sort of internal strife where the kingdoms split apart again and they had to get reunified. This happens all the time in Egypt. So next time we're going to be talking about two things, two very important things. One is religion. The second one is Kush, the kingdom of Kush, and more about Nubia. So stay tuned for that. I can't wait to talk to you about it. I hope you have a great day. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.